How the civilization of Egypt developed is more or less clear to us. But what about Europe? Europe was not far behind in development at the time of the construction of the Great Pyramids of Egypt. In the vast archipelago of the Cyclades, the Cycladic culture flourished between 3500 and 2000 BC. It is very difficult to say what the society of the ancient Cycladians was like, and what their settlements looked like. The Cycladic civilization did not know writing and practically left us no buildings. Although the fact that they were skilled craftsmen, we cannot doubt. The reason is simple. Of course, there are houses, or rather their remains, on the islands, but very few of them. Instead, there were many burial sites discovered there, of which about 20,000 have been excavated by archaeologists today. Even some ancient cultures that are much more significant in their external manifestations have not left such a huge number of graves. Modern Cyclades are bare rocky islands, but in ancient times, they were covered with dense forests. They were known throughout the Mediterranean as deposits of excellent marble and obsidian, red clay iron ore, and also emery, which ancient craftsmen used in the processing of precious stones, were found on the islands. A very powerful, largely still mysterious and distinctive culture had developed on the islands, the remains of which have been found in the Cyclades during archaeological excavations over the past 100 years. European travelers at the end of the 19th century drew attention to the finds of marble anthropomorphic figurines, older than the Greek ones already studied by that time. Systematic excavations were started in 1880 by the Englishman James Theodore Bent, and discovered so much that he claimed to have discovered a vast prehistoric empire. More than 500 graves were found in the largest burial ground on the island of Syros. Burials were made in stone boxes, schist, and later even in domed tombs. The composition of their grave goods includes high-quality ceramics of various types and beautiful diverse vessels made of stone, clay and stone lamps, and finally, all the famous Cycladic idols. The range of metal items found in the graves is also very significant. These include bronze daggers and spearheads, but tools are much rarer. Jewelry is also found in the graves, diadems and bracelets. The fact that weapons dominate in the burials suggests the men of the islands were engaged in piracy. After all, there is no gold or silver of their won on the islands. The metro has a small collection of items from the Cycladic civilization, stylized human figures with eyeless faces and their heads thrown back, almost ancient mannerism. The sizes of the figurines varies from 5 centimeters in height to 1.5 meters. That is almost a full human height. They depict women, men, and even entire families. At the sight of these sculptures, many people remember the idols of Easter Island. I remembered Modigliani's sculpture. The obvious masterpiece of the collection is the seated harpist marble sculpture, one of the first images of musicians. Harpists were apparently influential representatives of society, acting as the keepers of history, mythology, and music. They can be called the forerunners of the actors of the heroic Mycenaean era, to which Homer refers in his epic poems, including the Odyssey. The next undoubted masterpiece of the Cycladic civilization is the Kurnos, an ancient Greek ceramic vessel with cups on its rim. It was found in the eastern Mediterranean and was used for ritual purposes. C. 2300 to 1900 BC terracotta. The 25 containers around a central vessel is an example of virtuoso pottery. Although Kurnos were widely used in the prehistoric period, the most notable works were created in the Cyclades. A real Kurnos, possibly used to offer seeds, flowers, fruits, or drinks, is one of the best preserved. Also noteworthy is its discovery date of 1829, which preceded the start of systematic study and excavations in the field of prehistoric Greek art, when a female statuette was also found. Goddess of Fertility, marble female figure, 4500 to 4000 BC. The figure is of a rare type known as Steatopygus, characterized by particularly full legs and buttocks, and undoubtedly indicative of fecundity. This is what little remains of a mysterious civilization. It is assumed that the culture of the Cyclades was assimilated by the Cretan Minoan civilization and dissolved into it. Marble idols remained lying in the graves, while the forests were burned in smelting furnaces, after which the islands were depopulated for a very long time. The island of Crete became the next center of the most ancient European civilization. The Minoan civilization emerged in the 3-2 millennium BC. In Crete, the production of copper was mastered, and then bronze. Its basis was agriculture, and it focused on the civilization of 3 main crops: cereals, grapes, and olives. The development of trade in Crete is closely connected with the development of navigation. The inhabitants of Crete, already in the 3 millennium BC, established close contacts with the population of mainland Greece and Asia Minor, reached Syria and Egypt. Like other maritime peoples of antiquity, the Cretans willingly combined trade and fishing with piracy. The logical result of all these processes was the formation of the first palace states at the turn of the 3-2 millenniums. Among the palace utensils of this period, painted clay vases of the greatest interest. The color of richness of these paintings is striking. The ornament creates the impression of a non-stop movement of geometric figures, combined with each other, spirals, discs, rosettes, etc. The high quality of professional craftsmanship achieved by Minoan artisans already in the second half of the 3rd millennium BC is evidenced by the finds of jewelry. The development of states led to the next stage of development. Linear writing arose. The most remarkable architectural structure of this period is the Palace of Minos at Knossos. The Greeks called the Palace of Minos the Labyrinth. In Greek myths, the labyrinth was described as a huge building with many rooms and corridors. A person who got into the labyrinth could no longer get out without outside help and inevitably died. In the depths of the palace lived the bloodthirsty Minotaur, a monster with a human body and a bull's head. The tribes and people subject to Minos were obliged to amuse the terrible beast with human sacrifices every year, until he was killed by the famous Athenian hero, Theseus. Excavations have shown that the stories of the Greeks about the labyrinth had a certain basis. In Knossos, indeed, a building of outstanding size or even a whole complex of buildings with a total area of 10,000 m2 was discovered, which included about 300 rooms of the most diverse purposes. During its centuries-old history, the Palace of Knossos has been rebuilt several times. Its individual parts and the entire building as a whole probably had to be restored after each strong earthquake, which occurs in Crete about once every 50 years. At the same time, new premises were attached to the older, already existing ones. Rooms and pantries seem to be strung to one another, forming long rows enfilades. Despite the well-known unsystematic internal development, the palace was abundantly supplied with everything necessary to ensure that the life of its inhabitants was calm and comfortable. The builders of the palace took care of such important comfort elements as plumbing and sewerage. During the excavations, stone gutters were found, through which sewage was removed to outside the palace. A water supply system was also discovered, thanks to which the inhabitants of the palace never suffered from a lack of drinking water. The Palace of Knossos also had a well-thought-out ventilation and lighting system. The entire thickness of the building was cut from top to bottom with special light wells, through which sunlight and air reached lower floors of the palace. Large windows and open verandas served the same purpose. A significant part of the lower basement floor of the palace was occupied by pantries for storing food, wine, olive oil, and other products. Of particular interest is the wall painting that adorned the inner chambers, corridors, and porticos of the palace. Some of these frescoes depicted scenes from the life of nature, plants, birds, marine animals. Others showed the inhabitants of the palace itself, slender, tanned men with long black hair styled in whimsically curly locks, with a thin aspen waist and broad shoulders, and ladies in huge bell-shaped skirts with many frills and tightly drawn corsages, and bare breasts. The museum has a reproduction of the fresco, Ladies in Blue. This copy reproduces several fragments of the burned and worn original fresco. The original is in the Archaeological Museum of Heraklion in Crete. Two main features distinguish the frescoes of the Palace of Knossos from other works of the same genre found elsewhere, for example, in Egypt. Firstly, the high coloristic skill of the artist who created them, their keen sense of color, and secondly, art in conveying the movement of people and animals. An example of dynamic expression is the magnificent frescoes, which represent the so-called games with bulls, or the Minoan tauromachia. We see them in a rapidly rushing bull and an acrobat performing a series of intricate jumps past its horns and on its back. In front of and behind the bull, the artist depicted the figures of two girls in loincloths, obviously the assistant of the acrobat. Apparently, it was an important religious ritual associated with one of the main Minoan cults, the cult of the bull god. The bull's head vase is a type of rite-in or libation vase. The offering was poured out through a hole in the muzzle of the animal. The vase was filled either by immersion in a large container or through a hole in the head. By the siphon principle, the liquid will not flow out as long as the top hole is closed with the thumb. Civilization flourished, but it was during its heyday that something destroyed it. First theory. In the years 1642 to 1540 BCE, there was an eruption of the ancient volcano Thera, connected to the recent occurrence of an earthquake. It was believed that the whole catastrophe was caused by a tsunami, which destroyed the port of the Minoans in the city of Knossos. All this took place on the current island of Santorini in Greece. Maybe civilization could have survived, but the volcanic ash destroyed the vegetation, and the people would simply die of starvation. All the evidence supporting the theory was found in the settlements on Crete and did not raise any doubts. There were no assumptions about the extinction of the civilization for reasons not related to a natural disaster. But for any theory, there was always rebuttals. Tablets with inscriptions were found several decades ago in Crete. It was impossible to decipher the records quickly. Interestingly, the date indicated on the tablet indicates that they continued living for many years after the Minoans were considered an extinct civilization. The next assumption of scientists was that the Minoan people were captured by the Mycenaeans after one of the natural disasters, a tsunami or an earthquake. The conclusion that it was these people who were the invaders appeared due to the fact that the inscriptions of the tablets were made in the language of the ancient Greeks. All the debris that remained from the time of the existence of these civilizations could have been not a result of natural disasters, but after fierce battles and the enslavement of the Minoans. Other theories. Perhaps they were able to find salvation in one of the cities on the hill. This would explain the change of language. People do not want to believe that the Cretan civilization had disappeared forever. There is even now a place on Earth where this is a cult of playing with the bull death, where lush tiered skirts and tight blouses and black curls fall like snakes over the shoulders, where the thin waist of the bullfighters soar above the arena in a bizarre dance with death. This country is Spain. No wonder if the ubiquitous pirates were able to find a calm harbor in the raging sea, far from their homeland. It is widely known that the Phoenician merchant pirates set up their colonies in the southeast of Spain. There is no direct link from Crete to Spain, but the tradition can be traced. As can the myth of the lost Atlantis, there is other evidence of traces of Atlantis in Spain. We read about it in the text of Plato. If we recall that the north of the Iberian Peninsula, there are the caves of Altamira and other mysterious traces of the disappeared world, then let's say this: Spain hides many secrets in its history. There is no doubt that bullfighting is a national and centuries-old tradition. It changed along the way, but remained in the blood and cultural memory of these ancient people. The cult of the bull and bullfighting is the mystery of love and death. A striking thing in the souvenir shops in the south of Spain are clay vessels similar to Cretan ones, asymmetrical jugs with high noses, conventional ornament of the sea and fish. They irritate the memory with an association with the ancient culture of Crete. This is only a hypothesis, so similar to the truth. Further, the development of civilization moved to the mainland of Greece. At the turn of the 312 millennium BCE, from the north, the warlike tribes of the Achaean Greeks invaded the territory of the Balkan Peninsula. It took 500 years for the formation of the Mycenaean civilization, which flourished in the 15th to 13th centuries BCE. Achaean Greece consisted of many separate kingdoms that were constantly at war with each other, as evidenced by the powerful walls of the Achaean citadels. Sometimes, these kingdoms united in alliances in order to carry out major joint campaigns. For example, the legendary campaign against Troy was carried out by a powerful coalition of the Achaean kingdoms under the leadership of the king of Mycenae, the legendary Agamemnon. Homer wrote about the golden Mycenae. Archaeologists were able to verify this when, in the middle of the last century, a result of excavations in ancient Mycenae, a stunningly huge amount of surprisingly expensive and exceptionally well-finished items was found. It can be seen that arts and crafts reached an unprecedented height in Mycenae. The famous mask of Agamemnon, golden utensils, crystal goblets, weapons with magnificent inlay, all kinds of jewelry made of ivory, gold, silver, and bronze, combined with some of the crudeness of the Achaean applied art with a highly developed Minoan culture. It was believed that the centaurs were half human, half horse, and lived in remote forest areas. In many works of Greek art, they appear in battles with people, and as a result, the opposite of civilized people. A classic depiction of this object can be seen on the metopes of the Parthenon in Athens. However, in this bronze figurine, it is already fully represented. The outcome of the conflict is indicated by the end of the spear preserved on the left side of the centaur and the taller height of the man. During the heyday of the Minoan civilization, the culture of the Achaeans penetrated into Asia Minor and had a considerable influence on the rich city of Troy. Archaeologists have established that Homeric Troy is the 7th city of the 12 that were once on the Hisarlik Hill. Today, only the fortress walls remain from the city. Historians confirm that the Achaeans besieged Troy for a long time and only after a decade were able to conquer the city. The victory weakened the Mycenaeans. Subsequently, the Achaeans were replaced by other Greek tribes, the Dorians, who came from the north. Group of 4 vases, c. 2300 to 2000 BC. These 4 vases, said to have been found together, best match those found by Heinrich Schliemann in Troy, at the stratigraphic level known as Troy II. The wealth of jewels and objects of the last phase, Troy, led Schliemann to believe that he had found the city described by Homer. In fact, this material dates from about 1,000 years before the Trojan War. It is believed that after the end of the Trojan War, its heroes moved and settled in Cyprus, founding city-states adorned with magnificent monuments and cyclopean walls. Since then, the island has entered the Greek family, received a language and religion, and the development of ties and traditions has helped Cyprus resist the many would-be conquerors from the surrounding countries. The Achaean culture left a big mark on Greek architecture and largely determined its further development. The Metropolitan Exposition has interesting artifacts of ancient Greek culture. Gold cantharos, drinking cup with 2 tall vertical handles, c. 1550 to 1500 BC. Mycenaean culture, gold. One of the oldest forms of Greek vases, first became known during the Middle Hellas period. Terracotta female figure in a 3-legged chair, 13th century BC. Helladic Mycenaean in Gallery 151. Such images are often interpreted as thrones with a deity. Glass decorations. c. 1370 to 1200 BC, Helladic, Mycenaean, in Gallery 151. A group of 37 ornaments in 7 different designs. These ornaments represent the most characteristic motifs among Mycenaean glass ornaments. The presence of tiny holes in these elements indicates that they were connected to each other, and excavation evidence shows that they were worn as tiaras and necklaces. The various scroll patterns probably belong to the diadems. Ornament is the basis of cultural tradition. Reproduction of the fresco large S spiral frieze. c. 1400 to 1200 BCE. Ornamental spiral friezes have a long history in Minoan art. The variants shown here, with alternating up and down spirals and fan-shaped papyrus lotus flowers, became a favored frieze with ornament ribbons used to decorate most Mycenaean palaces. It has been suggested that the widespread use of such complex patterning supports the idea of a traveling guild of artists active on the Mycenaean mainland. The original is in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. Piracy and trade allowed cultural exchange between ancient civilizations. Gold earring with bull's head, c. 1400 to 1050 BC. Cypriot on display at the Met Fifth Avenue at Gallery 173. Most of the raw materials for Cypriot jewelry came from the East. Gold was mainly supplied by Syria and Egypt. The earring is a creation of Cyprus, an ornament in the form of a bull's head. And if there are decorations, then of course women are nearby. Terracotta figurine of a woman with a bird's face. c. 1450 to 1200 BCE. Cypriot. We met her sister in Egyptian culture. The figurine is a typical example of Cypriot tip art, with an accentuated pubic triangle and a clearly marked chest, probably of Syrian origin. But Cypriot sculptors created their own variations. Her eyes are balls surrounded by rings. Each large flat ear has 2 holes, each with an earring. Those with a humorous turn might notice that, if you look at several figures at once, it seems that these figures are wearing panties of different designs. By the 8th century BC, the influence of the Dorian tribes in ancient Greece noticeably weakened, which led to the restoration of the state system. This period is characterized by the so-called urban revolution, the rapid growth of city-states, policies, which became the main social and political unit of the Hellenistic world. This was an urban civilization. The city would be the center of all life, economic, cultural, political life, etc. For the first time, the city would appear, first of all, as a political and economic center. The Greek states and the polis as a state were very small. There would be at least 700 states. That is, you could walk through any Greek state from border to border in 3 hours. This was very important for the concept of homeland, the area where he lived, where he was a citizen. The ancient Greek policy consisted of 2 parts. It was the city center plus the territory that adjoins the center. But among the cities there was also monsters, say the Athenian state. The Athenian state and territory, the territory of Attica, was approximately 3 times the size of New York, which is one of the largest states in Greece. Sparta was a little bigger. The polis was a civil community based on the ancient form of ownership. This was an urban civilization, but 90% of the citizens were engaged in agriculture. The right to own property and land or real estate was a privilege of citizens.